The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everyone. We will go ahead and get started in just a couple minutes here. I just want to make sure all the attendees are able to be logged in and ready to go. Go ahead and just give this another minute and we'll get started. All righty. Good morning and welcome to today's webinar, Creating Differentiation and Growth Without Breaking the Bank. I'm Brian Pettiville, Chairman of the IIAB-Cal Emerging Leaders Committee. And with me today is Ira Kasdan, Insurance and Banking Practice Leader of the Impacts Corporation. Ira, for more than 25 years, has been a successful sales executive with extensive training experience to help leading businesses increase effective prospecting activity, differentiate themselves by how they sell, and reduce the time to full productivity of new hires. Over the past few years, Ira has worked with more than 35 independent agencies to obtain double-digit growth in sales. For today's webinar, we've muted all your phones to limit background noise. However, you can still ask questions throughout the webinar in writing those in the right-hand navigation area of the GoToMeeting. So if you look to the right, you'll see an area. So go ahead and type your questions in there, and we'll answer all the questions at the very end after Ira's done his presentation. So with that, Ira, go ahead and take us away.
Well, first of all, everyone, I appreciate you joining us today and taking time for this session. I want to be clear that our goal is by the end of the webinar that everyone who's joined us has at least a few practical ideas that you can take away from the session and put to work for you, begin applying right away. The whole theme of our session today is a topic that I run into all the time working with agents and brokers across the country. That, you know, just over and over and over again, I hear people at all levels of agencies saying they want to find a way to show prospects and clients that they're clearly different and clearly better than all of the other agents and brokers in their communities or areas who are calling on the same people. And so it's one of the most consistent themes and highest priorities I hear about most often. And what's interesting is working with many different agents and brokers across the country, I will ask all the time, one of the very first questions I'll ask with my clients is, how is your agency different? How is your agency better than everyone you compete with? And I think it's interesting, ironic, and in some ways almost funny that when you ask agency after agency, how are you different, that the answers are always the same. It's our people, it's our service, it's our in-house resources, it's our technology. And so what ends up happening is to try and get some competitive separation and to look and sound different to solve the problem. Many agencies go out and they invest in new products, new services, new technologies, additional in-house experts, always hoping that one of those things is going to be the silver bullet. Unfortunately, what agency after agency tends to find is that, you know, all of those solutions can cost a lot of money to put in place, and when you're selling to non-expert decision makers, as you so often are, you find that even when you have solutions and resources and technologies that are different and better, boy, to that uneducated, that non-expert buyer, boy, all of those products, services, and solutions sound a lot alike. So it's still hard to get separation. And even if you do install something or add something that gives you separation, it's hard to sustain because any of those solutions you can put in place, other agencies in the area can put in place as well, so that all of that sameness tends to continue. You know, so what can an agency do that's effective in getting more differentiation and separation, as well as affordable and sustainable? Well, you know, one definition of strategy is running the race differently, and that's really what we wanted to suggest today. And the idea we want to talk about is that how you sell says a lot about your agency if you stop and think about it. You know, one of the simplest yet most visible and powerful ways you can show that your agency is really unique from others in your area is less by what you sell and more by how you sell, the way you sell, and whether you sell in a way that makes you more like a trusted advisor, like a real professional, you know, someone who a client will go to for advice and business guidance, or more like an insurance dispenser, more like a vendor or a vending machine. I would ask you to think about it from the perspective of the organizations you call on, whether they're the owners, the executives, the insurance or benefits buyers who you and your salespeople are calling on. How many times have each of those individuals had the same meeting, the same discussion with every agency and every producer in town? And if you think about that Groundhog Day insurance sales call, what's it like? The producer, the agency, it's all about us. They only talk about themselves, explain how great they are, all their products and services and solutions that blur together with all the ones that you have heard of before. There's a lot of insurance and benefits focused discussion, but not a lot of discussion about what the customer's business is about, what they're there to do, why they're in business in the first place. I always say I don't know of any business owners who started a business so they could buy insurance or so they could buy benefits. So you find this traditional sales call, it's all focused on what we sell. The producer, the salesperson is doing all the talking, and there's a lot of what you might refer to as premature solutioning, offering solutions that may or may not be relevant to this particular customer or prospect because we've never really done our homework, we've never really done the discovery to understand very well what their needs are in the first place. So customers a lot of times, prospects a lot of times get very tired of this, what you might think of as show up and throw up or spray and pray approach to selling. So what are we suggesting that you could do, and you could start again as quickly as tomorrow, to really show that your agency is different and better than everyone else? Kind of a three-part, very simple roadmap for action. Set the right expectation, get ready, and conduct a different type of meeting. And we'll drill down into what we mean by each one of those. First of all, set the right expectation. When you first call, when you first make contact with the prospect or the client to arrange the meeting, we're encouraging you to ask for a different kind of meeting. We're not asking for a traditional selling appointment. We're not asking to come in and tell you about us, our products, our services, and solutions. Instead, what we want to do, we think from what we've learned, based on the homework we've done on your organization, on your business, we think you have a lot in common with many of the other organizations in your industry we're able to help. And so what we're trying to do is get some time on your calendar to come in and really focus about you, just to ask some questions, to broaden, to deepen, to update our understanding of your business and your situation, and then at the end of that meeting, we can decide what makes sense from there. So setting the expectation, this is a meeting about you and your business rather than about us, setting an expectation that we're coming in to ask good questions, update our understanding, take some good notes, and then we'll figure out where we might go from there, and if there's anything more that we might want to talk about. We say additionally, get ready. And what we mean by get ready is really do your homework before the meeting. Leverage available public data. And by data, we mean publicly available facts and figures that you can access and analyze in advance so you can make better use of your time during the meeting and make better use of the customer or prospect's time during the meeting. And so by data, we'd be talking about visiting the organization's website to find what you can on the website. Even if there's not a lot on the website, one of the things that you might do is call the company. If they're a public company, you might call and ask for investor relations and see what they can send you. If they're not publicly held, I know many of you are calling on privately owned businesses, you might just call the switchboard and ask for public relations, ask for marketing, anybody who deals with the media or the trade press when they're doing a story on the business. You might ask for a corporate profile or a press kit, and if they don't have one of those to describe their business, you might simply ask for any literature the organization has to help their prospects and customers understand what they do and what they provide. You'll find that few people approach companies in this way, and they'll generally be very, very willing to help you. Once you get your hands on whatever publicly available data you can, so you're doing your homework on the organization, rather than just eyeballing it or glancing at it, we suggest that you read through it, print it out, take a good look at it in hard copy, and really organize what you find into 4 categories. Maybe their profile or who they are as a business or an organization, where they're headed or their objectives, what they're trying to accomplish as a business or an organization, their strategies or the broad approaches, how they're trying to achieve or turn the dial on their objectives, and then finally their issues and challenges, what's in their way. And if you map out what you've learned in this advanced homework on your own, then what you can do is stand back from what you've learned and write out not 100 questions, but 8, 10, 12 good open-ended questions to engage the customer in discussion in filling in some of the things about their business that you haven't been able to learn on their own. When we talk, or on your own, and when we talk about questions to avoid, what we're talking about are closed-ended questions, questions that have one-word answers, questions that are leading and manipulative, or questions that are self-serving and really about your agency as opposed to about the customer. So if you can go in really trying to broaden, deepen, and update your understanding of the customer's business, I think you'll find consistently you can have much better meetings. Once you're ready, when you go in and you actually do the meeting, we suggest really do make it a meeting that stands out in the mind of the customer. First of all, if you want to get a lot of disclosure, you meet with one person from the customer organization at a time. You don't want to meet with somebody and their subordinate. You don't want to meet with somebody and their manager. You don't want to meet with a team of people at once because they're going to want you to tell as opposed to ask if you've got a group of them. So try and meet with one person at a time. Bring a research folder that shows printouts of the public data that you put together, maybe has some of your notes written on it. So, and put that on the table or the desk at the start of the meeting. It's a great way of shaping perception and showing that you really have done some homework and that you're genuinely interested in the customer's business. You know, explain your intent at the start of the meeting. Position your company, your agency, as the business as the agency who understands that an insurance strategy, that a benefits strategy, that a risk management strategy all begins with understanding the customer's business. And unless or until you have a good and current understanding of the customer's business, it ought to be malpractice to recommend insurance and benefits solutions, because you can't possibly know that you're on track. So with that in mind, you just want to ask some good questions, get the person talking, get their perspective, and take some good notes. We say during the course of the meeting you want to follow the 95-5 rule. And what that means is during this meeting, the customer, the prospect, should do 95% of the talking, and you should do 5%. So they should out-talk you 20-1. We additionally say, oh, and by the way, when you first try this type of meeting, one of the things we encourage you to do is the moment you're out of that meeting, stop and assess your own performance. Rate how well you did. Was I 95-5, 90-10, 50-50, 20-80? It's a great way to be sensitive. Am I really on receive mode and doing listening as opposed to send mode and doing talking? We say pay attention to timing and flow. And all we're suggesting really is this, is that most of us, when we go into a conversation, when we're asking questions, start out by being a bit guarded. And so you don't want to start a meeting with very sensitive or potentially threatening questions. So we suggest that you start your meetings with very safe, non-threatening questions. A good opening question so often is, I understand your title is controller, or I understand your title is safety manager, or I understand your title is HR manager. I know what that means in general, but help me understand what that means here at your organization, your role and the scope of your responsibilities. That is an easy, safe thing for people to talk about. So get them talking about their role. Ask some questions about the overall business. It tends to be something they can get engaged in and talking about. We often say at Impacts, when you use this approach to selling, when is it easiest to get somebody talking? And the answer to that question is when they're talking already. So when you get people talking about things that are close to them, things they're interested in, like their role, like their business, and save your insurance and benefits questions until the end of the call, people are already relaxed, they're already opening up, they're already talking. It's much easier to get them to elaborate, to tell you more, and to really share the truth. And then at the end of the meeting, summarize, thank the person for their time, summarize what you've learned, agree on next steps, which in many cases might be, gosh, based on what you shared with me today, it sounds like our agency could do a lot to help you with some of the priorities that you're focused on. What I'd love to do is get a follow-up meeting on your calendar so I could come back in and summarize what I've learned during this meeting and tell you a little bit about our agency in the next meeting and highlight some of the things we could bring to the party to support your business direction and the things you want to get done. So that's kind of the strategy that we're talking about. The benefits of running the race differently and doing the kind of appointments that we're talking about is really this. It doesn't cost you very much, if anything, to reshape how you set up and conduct these meetings. It truly does help you stop that Groundhog Day insurance sales call and have a meeting that stands out in a very positive way in the minds of the people you call on. By being prepared, by being informed, by being interested and asking good questions, it's a great way to build better and stronger relationships with your prospects and clients faster. It truly does give you more insight into their situation and what it's going to take to earn their business and what they truly see as value. It helps you, because you have that insight, to provide better and more robust solutions. By the way, the more you're able to share in a concise and accurate way about the customer's business, the better you're able to help sell that customer to underwriters, to markets, to carriers, so that you can actually be a better representative to your prospective clients as well. And finally, the more you know about a customer's business and where they're headed, the more it's going to reveal additional needs, so you can round out the relationship, or even take an existing relationship to a higher level and bring additional value. So all that said, I hope everybody has found at least a few ideas here that are helpful. If you want to learn more, we hope that you will join us for the webinars listed on the slide that we'll be doing in May and then later in August. And then lastly, I really hope that many of you will decide to join us at InsureFest in October. So that's what I've got. Brian, what kinds of questions did we get?
Well, first of all, I thank you very much. And I always find myself doing a lot of writing during these type of webinars, and I appreciate some of those tips. I immediately, the one thing that jumped out at me the most was that tip about rating your performance immediately after that meeting. All too often I find myself leaving a meeting and maybe being caught up in the moment, and then when I get back to the office, I kind of feel detached slightly from the meeting. And I think the best time to critique, like you said, is just immediately after. Think about the things you did, how it worked, and what didn't. So that's certainly my tip. And like I said, these are all things that, without a doubt, people can go out today and start applying. But real quick, again, everybody, go ahead and type your questions in that panel to the right there on the GoToWebinar chat section. There, you can go ahead and send your questions in. But I'll go ahead and get started. One thing that I wanted to ask you, Ira, is, what is your opinion? You've worked with so many agencies with such great responses, but when producers use this approach, going out to seeing prospects, how is it received versus kind of the quote-unquote traditional way?
I think that's a terrific question, Brian. And what's interesting is most of us as salespeople tend to think that we give value only when we're talking. And what's interesting is that customers, very often, if you ask them about the best meetings they've been to, or have been involved in, it tends to be the ones where they get a lot of airtime. And so we find that customers are very receptive to this approach. Frequently what we find in what our clients find and hear from their prospects and clients is that after 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 years of buying insurance or benefits, that no one has ever called on them being that prepared, that informed about their business, and that nobody seemed to be that interested or asked the kinds of business questions that this producer taking a different approach just has. And what's always so striking to the prospects and clients is, gosh, that does make a lot of sense, and how could somebody know what we need from an insurance or benefits perspective if they really don't have a broad and deep understanding of our organization and our business?
Okay, definitely. Got a question here. One of the questions we have is, can you give maybe an example or two of some of these open-ended questions that really get people talking? I know you threw one out there as far as talking about the job description and what they do here, but what are maybe a couple other examples that you would see?
Oh, sure. I think a great question is, I might ask somebody after I've asked about their role in the business. I might ask how long they've been in that role or been with that organization. And one of the interesting things is everybody has been where they are a short time or a long time. And if they've been there a short time, I might ask them, so tell me about the biggest surprises you've experienced since you're a relative newcomer. Tell me about the biggest surprises you've experienced since joining the organization. And a lot of times you get some interesting insights. Or in the time you've been here, what have been the biggest changes in the organization over the 5 years, 10 years, 15 years you've been here? And that gives you a historical perspective. I think some other things you might ask are about company priorities. A lot of times it's difficult to discern those from the publicly available data. So what are the big goals, the big targets that the company and its senior leadership are pursuing? What are the measures? What are the metrics that senior management looks at to decide how well the company's doing? And then a couple of things. What are the top external or marketplace issues and challenges facing the business? And just a final one, what are some of the top internal or organizational challenges facing the business? Those are all questions I find get people talking really well.
Great. Those are some great examples. And we're kind of going through all the questions here and make sure we got a lot to sort through, but let's go ahead and just touch on a couple more here. And the next one we're looking at is a great question, came to my mind as well, but how do you overcome the perception as a younger agent, maybe perceived as less knowledgeable? How do you overcome that with the prospects? What are some good pointers there?
Yeah, you know, first of all, I was in a meeting this morning with a client of mine where I mentioned I work with a young producer in South Carolina, and he follows this approach to selling that we have talked about today. And he said, you know, he's very young. He says, I have no gray hair, and everybody I call on is a lot older than I am, so they have more business experience than I do. And additionally, he said, I can't wow them with my insurance knowledge because I'm new to insurance. I've only been doing it for about a year. And he said what he likes is that he follows a systematic approach, and it helps him look like he knows what he's doing, right? Because it gives him a method, a methodology, a process that he's following. So one is having a systematic approach where you'll always get prepared and do your homework before you walk in, where you always ask before you tell. I think additionally, to walk into a meeting with a list of open-ended questions that you have organized from simple, safe questions to more higher gain questions later in your sequence. It's okay for a prospect or a customer to see that you have actually prepared. And when more of your questions show you've done homework on them and their organization, it'll really show people that you are following a systematic approach, that you do know what you're doing, and again, you might let them in on the fact that you're following a process, a systematic approach to really understanding a business, and that what you do is you take the business understanding you gain and you share it with the internal experts and resources back in your agency, and that's how you bring them the best solution.
Great, great. Well, I'll tell you what, we have time for one more question. I want to be mindful of everybody's time, and please, if you have questions we didn't get a chance to answer today, make sure you send them on over via email, and we'll be sure to get back to you. But one last question here for you. Do you think that this approach helps the overall perception of insurance agents in general? I love that question. Go ahead.
Well, I would just say, you know, first of all, it helps the overall perception of insurance agents in general with our prospects and clients. But I would suggest, too, that it helps our self-perception. It makes selling what we sell more engaging, more fun. You know, if you take this approach to selling, it not only helps to professionalize what you do, it's a great business education, better than any business school that you'd ever go to. And I think it can make all of us truly feel like professional advisors as opposed to vendors or, as we said earlier in the presentation, insurance dispensers. So absolutely, customers like it. It enhances our reputation and our image with them, but it can also reshape how we see ourselves. And there's a lot of good work that can be done there as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, Ira, thank you very much for spending your time with us today, and thank you all for attending. Just a couple notes at the end here. If you'd like to hear more from Ira on how to grow your agency sales, He will actually be presenting 2 more webinars, and those will be free to all IAB Cal members. Those are May 20th and August 6th. And to register for those webinars, if you haven't already, or to download the recorded version of today's webinar, go ahead and visit www.insurefest.org. That's Insurefest, INSURFEST.org, and click on the Insurefest Sales Track Webinar Series link. And then last but not least, in addition, Ira will be a presenter at this year's Insurefest, and we're really looking forward to that. That's going to be held October 24th through the 26th out at the Las Palmas Resort and Spa in Rancho Mirage. And for more information on that, go ahead and go to that same website, www.insurefest.org. And once again, Ira, thank you so much. And that concludes our webinar for today. Thanks so much. Have a great day.